I don't know about you, but every time I go on a hike, without fail, I find litter somewhere. Sometimes quite a lot of it. Now I know. Before you get upset, I don't think the majority of hikers or hill walkers or backpackers are the ones contributing to the plastic you see out in nature. So how does it all get here then? And if we all care so much about it, why is it so difficult to get it all cleared up? The whole idea of this video is that I wanted to organise a solo litter pick on a popular hiking route, see above, so that I could do some good, show how easy it was, and talk about this problem. But surprisingly, it proved to be a bit more complicated than it seemed, and actually not so easy to organise. So as well as talking about the problems with littering, I want to explore why it feels so difficult to do anything as an individual, and what I think are some solutions to the problem. And I'm starting with this. This setup might take some getting used to. So why is there more litter? Well, the obvious answer to me is that there are probably more litterers. There has been a massive boom in people trying outdoorsy activities for the first time, especially since we were all cooped up during lockdown. Add to that the rise of massive outdoorsy YouTubers like the Outdoor Boys and that one guy that always pops up on my feed that makes houses out of mud and sticks. Put those things together and it's easy to see why people want to give our favourite hobby a go. Bit of rubbish here. Don't know what that is, but it's blue and that means it probably doesn't belong out here. Before you get the wrong idea, I'm actually all for people getting outside. In fact, that's the reason I started this channel. I want to get more people to enjoy things like hiking and getting out into nature more, because I think it'll encourage them to care for it and want to protect it more. I think that especially right now when screen time is at an all-time high, people are stuck inside for the majority of their days and access to the outdoors is dwindling. Encouraging people to get out and try to connect with nature feels more important than ever. At least to me it does. And we can see people craving that connection more and more, whether it's with the rise of trends like cottagecore or people saying they want to live in a hut in the woods, which can't really blame them. This is pretty cool. There's clearly a growing popularity for the idea, which, great. But the problem arises when the vast majority of these people haven't been educated about things like leave no trace or even just basic trail etiquette and start exploring the countryside with the wrong idea. Now, I don't know the psychology behind littering, and I'm inclined to hope that the majority of litterers are simply uneducated rather than entitled. Maybe they think that someone is paid to come and clean it up every now and then, but the reality is that there seems to be less and less money going towards litter cleanup. Councils simply don't have the budget or the volunteers to manage litter in countryside trails, and even if they do, that's limited to publicly owned spaces. This is why I think hikers specifically have a litter problem. Like I said, I don't think the majority of us are the ones that are creating litter. Oh, bear with. Like I said, I don't think it's the majority of us that are creating litter. However, I do think that we should be making more of an effort to help clean it up. And I know it feels annoying to clean up after someone who you're probably imagining to be like really entitled or just hate nature or something, and trust me, I've only just started and already I'm imagining that person. The picture in my head is very clear. But that doesn't mean that we should leave litter here out of spite or to prove the point that there is no one here on standby to clean it up for them. As annoying as it is, and as much as we want to teach them a lesson, the litter is just going to stay out here until someone finally makes the choice to clean it up. And it looks like the joke's on me today. What a good tree. You seen this? Wow. If you're not convinced yet, let me try and give you some more reasoning as to why I think we should go one step beyond leave no trace. You might be thinking, if I clear it up, litterers will only think that they're allowed to litter again, that there are no consequences for their actions. Well, not to get all sociology on you, but I think the broken window theory comes into play a bit here. Basically, the idea that if a window in a building is broken and left unrepaired, the rest of the windows will soon be broken too, because people start to believe that if no one's fixed the first window, then no one must care about the others. So therefore, there's no harm in breaking more. According to this theory, in places where there aren't many other people around, like hiking trails perhaps, people look to their surroundings when they try to gauge social norms. If there's already a bunch of litter on the trail, people might think there's no harm in adding to it because clearly lots of other people have done it before them. So my theory is, if we pick up the litter, people are less likely to add their own, not the other way around. And you never know, you might just accidentally teach someone by example. Any litter around here? What is that? Can I even pick that up? Oh yeah. Another wrapper. If that's not done it for you, maybe you're still imagining a really entitled litter in your mind. Think about the public perception of hikers. And I mean all hikers, not just the ones who try it once and decide to litter. A lot of people who aren't into hiking probably don't realise that the majority of us do follow the principles of leave no trace. A few bad apples spoil the bunch, as they say. And if people start connecting hiking with litterers, they might start questioning whether we deserve to enjoy the outdoors. This really scares me because, like I said, we're already losing access to nature in so many different ways, and letting litter just stay in these places just gives landowners a leg to stand on when they want to keep us out. Now, I know that based on my audience, I'm preaching to the choir, so I'm not going to go into all of the ways that litter is obviously bad for the environment. I'm sure we all already have an idea of that at least. But I also know that I personally could be doing more. As much as I try and pick up the odd thing on every hike, and I definitely pack out everything that I bring with me, there have been times when I stumble across someone's litter, sigh in frustration, and then carry on with my hike. I'm not proud of it, but at the same time, I can kind of understand why I didn't at the time. And that's kind of what I want to explore next, because even when you know the rules and you want to help even more, it can be hard to know how to go about it. At this point, you're probably thinking, fine, you've convinced me. I'll pick up some litter. But if not, I still kind of understand. Maybe one of the reasons people don't feel like helping is because they feel like they have no ownership over the land. Sure, we'd all love to have a positive effect on our environment, but for a wealthy landowner, someone who probably begrudges having to let us on their land anyway, it's hard to feel that sense of responsibility when you hardly feel like you're welcome in the first place. Which leads me on to one of the barriers that I face while trying to organise this litter pick. When I got in touch with the local council about this video, they specifically told me not to litter pick on private land. That kind of sounds straightforward enough, right? But if you didn't know, most of England's land is private, and it's increasingly difficult to find out who owns what land in the UK. And honestly, it feels like a waste of time and a barrier to actually starting the work. Sure, maybe they have to say that so that they aren't liable for people who take things that aren't litter or something, or maybe they don't want to be wasting funds on cleaning up areas that are a landowner's responsibility. But in my opinion, I'm a volunteer. I don't work for the council, and I'm here to clean up nature. I don't care who has the little piece of paper that says that they own the land. This litter could fly into public land at any moment, so I may as well sort it now. Plus, the whole limiting where you can litter pick thing kind of adds another layer of confusion about how and where to start cleaning it up. Honestly, I don't know where public land is and isn't, so for the sake of this video, I'm sticking to public footpaths and hoping that that's okay. Also, check out this view. Anyway, I just think that if councils across the UK are already cutting budgets for litter picking, surely they should be encouraging us to pick up the slack by making it a bit easier to understand. And don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming the specific individuals from the councils that I spoke to. A lot of them were really helpful and friendly. I think this is more of a broader issue across local government and, the government in general. This solo litter pick was harder to organise than I expected, and it surprised me. I wanted to do this solo because, to be honest, I like my alone time, I like my solitude, and I didn't really fancy filming this video in front of strangers that I'd have to make awkward small talk with. However, partway through planning this trip, I started to see the appeal of having someone else organise it for you. On top of the restrictions of where I could litter pick and where I couldn't, the local councils in the areas that I was talking about doing this in were a bit confused when I got in touch. For context, I work in a corporate setting and have done for a few years now, so I have some experience finding the right email addresses and the right people in the right departments, and, you know, kind regarding my way through an email or two. Tell me why then I still had to try maybe 3 to 4 people via email and phone calls, who then passed me on to another 3 to 4 people before I could actually get through to someone who knew how to answer my questions. All I wanted to know was how to go about completing a litter pick on my own without joining a group, and what to do with the rubbish after I'd collected it. I don't know about you, but I thought those were pretty easy questions. It actually really worried me again because I can see this being a big barrier to people, especially people who don't have the time or energy to, you know, corporate speak their way through people to get the answers that they need. Some people just straight up ignored me, like, come on guys, I'm just trying to do a good deed here. And sure, I probably could have just grabbed a bin bag and started collecting rubbish without asking anyone. I'm sure that's what most people do. But I'm the kind of person, I'm the kind of person who likes to know everything about an event before agreeing to go. Also, the main reason I needed to ask questions was because I don't have a car. I didn't fancy the idea of dragging a couple of bin bags on a train and then a tram and then walking them all the way home to my house so that I could use my bins. Not only would that be highly annoying, but it's probably a public health hazard. Don't know if you can see, but we've got a whole orange here. Orange or nectarine maybe. If you didn't know, don't drop your, this is a second one by the way, don't drop apple cores, banana peels, orange peel, any kind of fruit that doesn't belong on the ground. I know you might think, well, it's a natural thing. It was grown outside, but it wasn't grown outside here, most likely, and so that can really do a lot of damage to the environment and the wildlife. If you want to know more about that, you can watch my video about the 7 principles of leave no trace. Food is included in that, so I'll link that down below, but for now, just don't do it. Anyway, instead of asking why do you need to ask these questions before doing it, I think it should be more, why wasn't it clear enough that I didn't have to ask in the first place? Why is there no obvious place for me to leave a couple of bags full of rubbish that I've collected? When I eventually got through to the right person in one of the areas I was looking into, I was told I could leave whatever I collected today by the bins in the train station, which, you know, doesn't feel very official, but it'll do. That's a useful answer to my questions. I feel like that should be labelled somewhere. These bags full of litter are not fitting in your standard bin, so it does feel a bit like fly tipping. My point here is just that I think there must be a better way to make the proper disposal of rubbish easier for everyone. Maybe we could even incentivize it, but more on that later in the solution section. While I'm on the topic of barriers, I think this whole thing just highlights another one: lack of education. A lot of the staff at various levels of councils I encountered didn't seem to know how to help, and I've never been taught how to do this properly either. Sure, the filming aspect of this has added another layer of difficulty in planning, but still, the organisation factor is just another barrier for people. I can only do this because I have time and the headspace to do it, mainly because I'm lucky enough that my work offers paid time off to volunteer. Not everyone has that kind of flexibility and time to work out how to do the thing and then go out and do it. Hopefully I can alleviate some of that stress and organisation later on in the video. If you are someone like me who likes a bit more structure, a bit more guidance before jumping into something like this, I will be giving you some tips in a second, but I just want to say one more thing before I jump into what I think are the solutions to this littering problem. I know it can feel pointless. I think the reason I didn't stop to pick up that litter on those previous hikes was because it just feels like you're a drop in the ocean sometimes. We've all seen or heard the statistics that a handful of corporations are responsible for the vast majority of global pollution, and picking up a few crisp packets or bottles feels a bit meaningless. However, rather than getting frozen by climate anxiety and feeling like I can't affect anything at all, I know that I'll feel better knowing that I've at least chipped away at just some of it, even if it's just in my local community or a place that I like to explore. I know I can't fix everything, but I can do my bit. We might just be drops in the ocean, but an ocean doesn't exist without each drop. So hopefully that wasn't too doom and gloom. Ooh, and you're ready to hear what I think are some solutions and what we can do as individuals. Now, I am going to talk about the litter that's already here and what we can do about it in a second. God, some of this stuff's really like embedded in here. Sorry, I'm going to talk about what we can do about the litter that's already here in a minute. But first up, do you remember reduce, reuse and recycle? Because I feel like the recycle part gets all of the limelight when the other two are just as important, if not more. That's because the easiest way to reduce litter, even accidental littering, because, you know, it can happen to anyone, is by bringing out less waste in the first place. The things that I see the most out on hikes are single-use plastics like water bottles, cling film, and meal deal wrappers. I love a meal deal as much as the next person if I've forgotten to prep some lunch in advance. But one of the ways to reduce waste is by making your scran at home with a reusable sandwich bag, or even better, something like that reusable beeswax paper stuff. I'm not going to go into massive depth about how plastic is really bad at getting recycled, even when people do go through the proper channels. Simon Clark has a great video about this that I'll link in the description. But essentially, it's just better to use the least amount of plastic, especially single-use plastic, as possible. I had one comment from someone saying that they use paper envelopes for snacks, and I just think that that's genius. And it's not just about what you take out with you either. This can be applied to everything. I made a whole video about how hiking fashion is kind of becoming a bit fast fashion-y in my opinion, which surprisingly did way better than I was expecting, by the way, so thank you for the support on that, but I'm not going to bang on about it again here. Essentially, don't fall into the trap of thinking that you need perfect gear for every trail. Buy better and buy once. And this goes for the reuse part too. Fix your gear. I might just be a hoarder, but when I see a waterproof jacket that's beyond saving, I just see a whole lot of fabric that can be used to patch holes in your tent, your waterproof trousers, your other waterproof jacket. Get creative with it. It saves money and it keeps stuff out of landfill. But enough about that. What can we do about the litter that's already out here? I've talked about leave no trace before, but we need to start aiming a bit higher and leave it better than we found it. Even better, go on a specific litter picking hike like I am right now, whether that be solo or with a group. If you've got a car, I think it's definitely a bit easier, but I'm here proving that you can do it with public transport. Sure, it's a bit harder and it required a bit more planning, but definitely doable. The best way to start is by getting in touch with the local council of wherever you're planning to do your litter pick and asking them if they have any specific bin bags they'd prefer you to use, like this one right here. And if you're planning on litter picking far from where you live, like I am, they might even be nice and post them to you. These special bags, they tend to be different for every county, basically let the people picking up the rubbish know that it hasn't been fly tipped and has actually been collected by a volunteer. I also got my gloves and litter picker here from my local council, but I ordered the hoop online myself. If you want to buy your own gloves, I'd recommend something a bit more heavy duty. You don't want to use something like your standard latex gloves because they're just so easy to tear. And again, that's just another piece of single-use plastic that we don't need to bring out here. You're better protected with something like heavy-duty gardening gloves or workers' gloves, or if you just search litter picking gloves, you'll come up with ones like these, which are tear-resistant and offer you a little bit more protection. Even with the extra protection though, I wouldn't recommend picking up anything that looks hazardous or suspicious. You should just take a photo of it, make a note of the location using something like what 3 words, and report it to your council. Let the professionals handle it. Another thing to ask before you go is where you can leave any rubbish you collect. Admittedly, it's not always super straightforward and you might have to do a little bit of detective work, but if you Google who handles waste management in blank location, it'll probably come up with results from that council, and that's your best bet on who to try first. They might ask you to go on a specific day in case bins aren't collected regularly to, save the bags from being left out for days. And it might take a couple of calls or emails, but once you've done it, it'll be easier next time. And I really think you can bring this out on a smaller scale too. You don't have to go and do a full-blown litter pick like I have. I think just pack some litter picking gloves in your backpack with a bin bag or two, and you can use your hike as an opportunity to grab a little bit of waste. And on that scale, you could probably take it home with you with the space you've made with your lunch, or, you're probably able to shove it into a normal bin. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but every little helps. I love seeing the sheep. Now I know these are all things that put the onus on us as individuals when companies and corporations create far more waste than any of us, but like I said, I am an individual. I know that I can get a bit climate anxious when I see all of the things that giant companies are doing that I personally can't get them to stop. However, the litter that we see in these places, like the peaks or any other natural space, hasn't been littered by an invisible corporation. This comes from people like us who either don't know better or don't care. Yet, I still have hope that they can be changed and educated. Anyway, these solutions are things that you can do at that drop in the ocean level that at least contribute towards cleaning up spaces that we love to explore. And hopefully it helps you to feel a bit less anxious about it all, like it's helping me right now. I would like to talk about one change that isn't at an individual level though, and that is the deposit return scheme. The reason I think recycling has a bit too much of the limelight right now is that I'm just not sure that traditional recycling is as effective as it could be, at least not in this country. Norway has a deposit return scheme that actively encourages people to return cans and bottles by paying them per item about 2 to 3 Norwegian kroner, which is about 18p or a quarter if you're from the US. This includes plastic and metal, and containers with a high enough return rate are exempt from environmental tax, giving a good incentive for the producers themselves to participate. Now, you might think, what's 18p? But the scheme is actually doing really well. According to Infinitum, the company who owns and manages the scheme, 92.3% of plastic bottles were returned, meaning 589 million bottles, or nearly 22,000 tons of plastic, have been recycled. I think that little mindset change that literally turns one person's rubbish into another person's treasure can do a world of good. We actually nearly had a deposit return scheme in the UK that was supposed to launch in 2023, but it has since been pushed back 3 times and is expected to be delayed until 2027. Apparently they're blaming the Welsh government for wanting to include glass in the scheme because, oh no, we're incentivising even more recycling? Heaven forbid. If you didn't know, Cymru is actually the second best in the world for recycling rates, so I feel like they have a better leg to stand on than the rest of the government do. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the more materials included in the scheme, the merrier. If you watch Simon Clark's video about recycling, you'll see that it's much harder to efficiently recycle plastic than it is glass. So the fact that they're trying to remove glass from the scheme is mind-boggling to me. Of course, you can still recycle it through the normal channels, but I would like to see that incentive added in, especially when we do tend to see a lot of beer bottles hanging around out here. I guess there is one benefit to the scheme being delayed though. We can all get cracking with litter picking, and by the time the scheme actually starts here, we'll pretty much be well on our way to have a nice big deposit to cash out with. That is a stock market I can get behind. Even if the government is dragging its feet, small things are changing at more local levels that we can be hopeful about too. Now, this was in 2021, so I'm not sure if this scheme is still active, but both Castleton and Bakewell's visitor centres have been encouraging litter pickers and making it easier for volunteers by loaning out equipment for day hikers. You used to be able to book these online, so if I can find that, I'll link it down in the description, but you can see how something like that would be super useful. I've just had to suck it up and bring my gear with me on the train. I could really do with a fold-away litter picker, to be honest, but I'll suck it up for now. Anyway, the fact that there's probably more of us than ever out here in the hills really makes me hopeful for the fact that more people than ever are going to be caring about the environment and wanting to protect it. And I think that could really turn the tide with this litter problem. The truth is, I'm not litter picking because I think doing this is some grand idea that will solve everything. I'm just doing it because I want to give a little bit back to the planet and hopefully set a good example that even when things feel a bit hopeless, we can still make a little bit of difference in our corners of the world. And you never know, maybe someone will see you giving it a go for the first time and think, huh, maybe I'll bring some gloves and extra bin bags next time. My camera is dying, so I'm filming my outro now. I still have about half of my hike left, and this is how much I've collected so far. I hope this has encouraged you to do a little bit more to protect our wildlife, not because I think you specifically are littering or aren't already doing your bit, but because I know that I personally haven't been doing enough myself. I've linked some stuff in the description that you might find helpful, charities and organisations that I think are doing great things in this area. For example, the British Mountaineering Council, who recently set up a page for volunteers to report and clean up fly camping litter. Let me know if you have any tips or tricks when it comes to litter picking, and thank you to my members and patrons for supporting the channel. And thanks for watching.